Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. Naxxramas is out, and it has been cleared as expected within the same day that it was released. But not in the same hour for once. The European Guild Progress took home the first prize, putting on a true show of meticulous preparation and game knowledge. Their clear taking a very impressive 1 hour and about 25 minutes. Quite unlike every raid that's come before though, this final tier of Classic wasn't just about who got into the raid instance first, actually being basically guaranteed to win. Naxx has so far proven to be a genuine challenge for, well, everyone really. From the guys who cleared this place on numerous fan servers, the players putting in time on the PTR to perfect their strats, or your dad guild heading in there for the first time to see what all the fuss is about. Naxx is no joke. On the night of the release of the raid, I did a video and I thought it's gonna be harder than AQ40, right? But not like actually hard, surely. Well, let's just say I'm waiting a bit more time until we look at the progress stats breakdown for tier 3. I'll do it after the second reset has concluded. But for now, I just want to take a look at how the raid played out at the top end for once. Usually it's not an area I touch on overly, but it really does go some way to show that Naxxramas ain't easy. So you may hear, well, the raid was cleared in about an hour and a half, it can't be that hard, right? Yeah, and Limit or whichever guild's gonna blast through Mythic Castle Nafria within the space of a week probably. It doesn't make it easy, not at all. In fact, similar to retail, the prep work put in advance really came off to show for this raid, and it's actually ended up being perhaps the first tier where even high-end guilds will experience some form of progression. And for the guilds who had already been progressing in AQ40 or perhaps even BWL, well, Naxxramas is going to be on a totally different level in more ways than one. In fact, even if your guild just saw up to Sapphiron in the first week, you are in a much smaller group of players than you may expect. But back around to the top guilds, what made the perfect run possible? Because many of them lost a lot of players or just straight up wiped. And a wipe in Classic, unlike retail, is usually considered game over. You can't recover from the loss of power that world buffs give you, right? Well, it turns out you sort of can, because checking the logs of the top guilds, very few of them just have 40 players overall. In fact, there are a number of reasons going into why guilds opted to swap people in and out so heavily, and to a degree that's not been seen in any raid tier previous to Naxxramas. This is definitely in part down to how Naxx is designed, as well as different encounters heavily favouring certain classes. For example, you just finished Construct Quarter but had 2 or 3 people lose world buffs. If you have others waiting, you can easily rotate them in as you teleport straight back to the entrance with basically next to no downtime. This wouldn't have been a thing in any other raid, as you would either have to have summoned them or let them run to you once they get inside, let alone the challenge of actually getting inside a raid by yourself without being ganked on PvP servers. There are some more melee unfriendly encounters in Naxx, especially the last 2, Sapphiron, range can keep DPSing a bit more during the air phase, as well as KT for the Void Zones and Frostblast. Both of these are a big hindrance for melee. There are also encounters that benefit certain classes much more than others. Shadow Priests are incredible on Lotheb. Vampiric Embrace is a real carry for your group-wide heals. They're also very good on Resuvius and Felina for mind controls, as they should already be having the hit cap to make sure those mind controls go smoothly. Shadow Priests are even solid on Sapphiron. That group-wide damage is no joke when Frost Aura is constantly hitting your whole party. It is at the expense of other debuff slots though, and Shadow Priests take up a lot of debuff slots. You'd probably see even more of them if they didn't, but their unique utility really starts to shine in Naxx. 8 Warriors, of course, has seemed to be the way to go for 4 Horsemen so far. There was some talk about possibly being able to just blast through it so quickly that the mechanics wouldn't matter and you could just get through it, but the shield wall usage at certain health thresholds makes this pretty much a no-go, and your whole raid has to do the fight properly. Paladins and Shaman are as great as ever. You are already going to have a bunch of them in your raid, I'm sure, but Sapphiron and KT are a real test on healers, many guilds opting for 12 to 16 on their first clear, over half the raid spamming heals. That really is just how intense it gets. Frost resistance totems and auras are absolutely invaluable. 60 extra is no joke. Oh, and by the way, if you are assigned to be in a group that doesn't have a Shaman or Paladin, bring along a Magic Resistance Potion. They don't stack with the auras though, but 50 extra Frost Res is definitely worth picking up. And in terms of swapping players in, some guilds used, no exaggeration, upwards of 60 to 70 players total in their first full clear. You might be thinking that's cheating the system a bit, but hey, this is a thing in retail too. You fit your comp best you can to overcome the challenge. And as we will see in a moment looking at some logs, there had been players who had been raid logged for nearly 3 weeks 3 weeks to keep those incredibly powerful Darkmoon Fur buffs running. 10% extra damage is just too huge to pass up. But of course, the main reason people were swapped out was just for world buffs. The power gap they give, as we've seen across other raid tiers, is upwards or around a 30% increased performance, which is just too much to miss out on when you're competing at the top level. Speaking of competing at the top level, it's not just all about world buffs. Oh no, we're gonna need some consumables. A lot of consumables. Naxx is expensive to raid, like really expensive. Funny thing is, top guilds would probably be spending a whole lot less than more average guilds if they weren't chain popping flasks like they're nothing. Because if you don't wipe and you clear really fast, you don't need to repop consumes. This is something I've thought for a while. Get world buffs for raids, clear faster, you need less consumables, so less time gold farming, and more time doing other stuff you want to. So world buffs save you gold and time in and out of raid. That's your big brain take for today. Anyway, looking at Progress's World First Naxx, let's see what they went through. These are all popped during the raid, by the way. The little lines here show exactly at which point during the log they were used. So we have nearly 100 Greater Shadow Protection Potions, 133 Greater Frost Protection Potions, 16 Flasks of Titans used like really expensive health potions, 28 Flasks of Petrification. These basically make you immune to all effects and remove debuffs with no cooldown. Exactly like Divine Intervention in your bag, but you can use it on yourself, and no paladin has to sacrifice themselves. So they are pretty insane when you need to remove an undispellable debuff, like the one from the gargoyle trash mobs, or if something just goes wrong in general, you can instantly correct it. Looking at another guild, Onslaught here, the first Horde guild to complete a clear, big congrats, who used, let's just say, a lot of players after things went a bit south at Four Horsemen, happens to the best of us. And by the way, far few Horde guilds have completed Naxx so far compared to Alliance. Paladin's OP, but let's see what they went through in one night of raiding. We have 191 Greater Shadow Protection Potions, 156 Greater Frost Protection Potions, 58 Greater Stone Shield Pots, 48 Petri Flasks, 37 Titans, and 128 Flasks of Distilled Wisdom. They would have been using these like mana potions just to keep themselves going. 128 flasks. That is absolutely insane. And in case you're wondering, Progress, who are an Alliance guild, use 17 Distilled Wisdoms. Paladins actually OP, like they start getting really nuts in Naxx gear. In comparison, they use probably less regular consumables than your average guild, you know, things like your Nightfin Soup, your Greater Arcane Elixir, your Mongoose. And I'm thinking even now guilds are going to need to find a way to measure between cutting costs on consumables if you want to keep your raid going. The expectation to have everything for every raid, I reckon, is going to be one of the biggest attrition factors in this raid. But this was for world first competition. That's the lengths you have to go to really compete for that #1 spot. It may have been pretty short-lived, as every raid has so far, but for the first time, it made these best players in the world look mortal. And of course, keep in mind, this was from guilds with multiple raid rosters ready to log in, who do split runs, fully buffed and consumed, who have been raid logged for weeks, just to be able to benefit from the Darkmoon Fur buff. They've been preparing on the PTR. Many of these guys have already done the raid numerous times, if not back in the day in actual vanilla, then on fan servers since. And a bunch of them still wiped. Imagine when we see non-Darkmoon Fur week reclears, it's just not always going to be the smooth sailing either. The raid is just very punishing to any small mistake, as well as just being massive in length. The vast majority of guilds aren't going to be able to be propped up by the world buff crutch, unless they do 2 raid nights either for a good long while to come. Good mechanical play can and has been shown to be able to overcome world buffs, which a lot of people have been relying on to frankly just skip mechanics or see bosses just fall over before they do anything. The raid is absolutely doable and is much more of a progression and mechanics check than anything we've seen so far, even for great players. So though the world first insanity of what goes into it in terms of the prep, the consumes, the multiple raid teams, the raid logging, it is what it is, but Naxx is shaping up to be a bit tougher than, well, certainly more so than I'd expected. But if you're more casual yourself, I wouldn't lose all hope. It's just going to be progression for once. This is what it's like. And one last thing I just want to add on around the costs of raiding. If you head in with world buffs, make sure you do the bosses that benefit greatly from them first. Get patchwork done, head to Plague, kill Hygen before he does the dance, get Lotheb, and then just go from there and see what your raid can do. If you lose buffs, don't act like every pull has to be the kill. do dry zero consume runs to check the mechanics, to get your team more comfortable of what's expected of them, to check no one has some unexpected issues like, I don't know, a pet bar not showing on Resuvius or Fairlina when you're mind controlling, some weak aura not working for healing rotations on Lotheb, or a kick rotation on KT, just to double check everything's fine. The repair cost is nothing to a round of consumables for any class. And the last thing you want is your progression to be cut short because you're just demanding too much of your players, when realistically there are very likely to be other improvements made first, but the answer isn't just I need to throw gold at the problem until the problem goes away. I'm really looking forward after the second reset to do a full review of the raid and how guilds are progressing on it so far. Anyways, let me know how you're getting on in Naxxramas, and best of luck in there and have fun. As always, thanks all so much for watching and listening in, and I will see you in the next one very soon. If you like what you see, do give the video a like and subscribe, as there will be plenty more to come. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.